A little girl's desperate cry stops a millionaire at the last second. What happens next will shock you. Watch till the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. The morning sun spilled across the wide driveway of Michael Hudson's Manhattan mansion, catching the polished navy blue Lamborghini parked in front of the marble steps. For a man whose schedule was planned down to the last minute, Michael was already running late. At 42 years old, he had built an empire in construction and real estate, a fortune that made him one of the most influential businessmen in New York. His calendar was filled with meetings that most men would kill for. Today was no different. An investor's lunch downtown, followed by a presentation on a skyscraper project in Midtown. Sliding behind the wheel of the Lamborghini, he tapped the ignition button. The powerful engine roared to life, the low hum vibrating through the car's leather interior. To Michael, it was the sound of control, success, and escape. He straightened his tie in the rearview mirror, mind already on his opening remarks for the presentation. But before he could shift into gear, a shrill voice cut through the air. "Don't drive! Don't drive! Your wife cut the brakes!" The words rang out like a warning bell. Michael froze. His head snapped toward the sound. At the far end of the driveway, a small figure sprinted past the iron gates, barefoot, tangled hair bouncing wildly with each step. A girl. She couldn't have been more than 9. Her skin was dark, her clothes torn and several sizes too big, hanging loosely over her bony frame. Dust and dirt clung to her bare legs. Her feet were scratched, her knees bruised. Yet her voice carried with a force no child should have. The security guard on duty, Jack Miller, was the first to react. A stocky man in his late 30s, he stormed forward, intercepting the child before she reached the car. "Out of here now, you little brat!" he barked, grabbing her by the arm with rough authority. But the girl fought with a desperation that startled him. She twisted, pulled, and shouted louder, her thin voice cracking but determined. "Please, sir, please, you can't drive. She cut the wires. She cut them last night." Michael's hand lingered on the gear shift. Something in the girl's cry froze him. It wasn't the words alone. Beggars said anything to survive. It was the weight behind them, the raw terror, the urgency. Slowly, he killed the engine and opened the door. "Let her go, Jack," Michael ordered, stepping out. Jack looked baffled. "Sir, she's just some street kid. They do this all the time." "Let her go," Michael repeated, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Reluctantly, Jack released her arm. The girl stumbled but quickly steadied herself, her large brown eyes fixed squarely on Michael. They were eyes that didn't blink, didn't waver, eyes that had seen too much. Michael approached cautiously, still keeping some distance. "How do you know my name? How do you know about my wife?" The girl's chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath. "I saw her," she said, voice trembling between sobs. "Last night in your garage. She had tools. She was under your car, cutting wires. I heard her talking on the phone. She said you wouldn't be coming home again." Michael felt his blood run cold. His wife, Victoria, 35 years old, had been acting strangely for weeks, canceling their anniversary trip, claiming headaches, staying up late, whispering into the phone. She'd barely touched him at night, her excuses vague and rehearsed. And right now, she was supposedly upstairs in bed, too ill to move. "You're lying," Michael said, though his voice cracked more than he wanted it to. "I don't lie about this," the girl cried, her small fists clenched, her dirty cheeks streaked with tears. "My parents died like that. Someone cut their brakes 2 years ago. I was in the back seat. I know what it sounds like. I know what it looks like." The driveway went silent except for the faint hiss of the Lamborghini's cooling engine. Jack shifted uncomfortably, torn between skepticism and the sharp edge of his employer's unease. Michael crouched slightly, lowering himself to the girl's level. "What's your name?" he asked, softer now. "Amira?" she whispered, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "Amira Johnson. Sometimes I sleep behind the wall by your house. That's how I saw her." For the first time, Michael really looked at her, the tangled curls of her hair, the oversized sweater slipping off her shoulders, the bruises on her small feet. This was no scam artist. She was a child who had survived horrors no child should. Michael stood quickly, turning to Jack. "Check the car, now." Jack blinked. "Sir, this is ridiculous." "Now!" Michael snapped, his voice echoing through the driveway. Startled, Jack muttered under his breath and strode toward the garage. Michael stayed crouched in front of Amira, his expression tense. "If you're lying, I'll call the police," he warned. "But if you're telling the truth, then I owe you my life." Moments later, Jack's voice boomed from the garage. "Mr. Hudson, something's wrong here." Michael's stomach dropped. "The brake cables, they're cut," Jack shouted, his tone unsteady. The world seemed to tilt. Michael's legs wobbled beneath him. If he had driven out for that meeting downtown, he would have reached the steep descent on Fifth Avenue within minutes. And at that speed, with no brakes. His hands trembled as he looked back at the child. "How did you know?" he whispered. Amira reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, filthy teddy bear missing one eye. She clutched it tightly as she answered. "Because I promised. I promised I would never let it happen again. Not to anyone. My parents told me, protect people, even when no one protects you." Michael swallowed hard. For the first time in years, he felt the chill of helplessness. A child, an invisible child, forgotten by society, had just saved his life, and the woman he had shared his bed with for 5 years might have been plotting his death. He glanced toward the mansion windows, the curtains gently swaying in the morning breeze. Victoria was up there, pretending to be ill, pretending to be his wife. His jaw tightened. Everything he thought he knew about his life had cracked in an instant. "Come with me," he said to Amira, his voice firm. "You're not safe out here, not anymore." Amira hesitated, clutching her bear closer, but when Michael extended his hand, she placed her small fingers in his, trembling yet certain. Together, they walked back toward the house, where shadows waited behind perfect walls and secrets threatened to unravel everything. And in Michael's mind, one truth became clear: this was only the beginning. The cafe in Brooklyn was quiet, a place Michael Hudson rarely visited. He was a man of exclusive restaurants and private lounges, but today he needed somewhere off the radar, somewhere anonymous. The Lamborghini was still parked at the mansion. He'd arrived here in a nondescript town car. Across the small wooden table from him sat Amira Johnson, the barefoot girl who had stopped him from driving into what would have been certain death. She was devouring a sandwich with both hands, crumbs scattering onto the table, mayonnaise smearing her fingers. It was as though she hadn't eaten in days. Michael, still shaken from the morning, watched her with a strange mixture of pity and gratitude. "You can slow down," he said gently. "There's more where that came from." Amira froze for a moment, embarrassed, then wiped her mouth with the back of her sleeve. "I'm sorry," she muttered. "No need to apologize." Michael leaned back, his mind racing. "But I need you to tell me exactly what you saw last night. Every detail." Amira looked around nervously, as though the walls themselves might be listening. Then her small voice filled the empty cafe. "I sleep behind your wall sometimes. It's safe there. No one bothers me. Last night, I woke up because I heard noises in the garage, metal banging, like when my dad used to fix cars." Her eyes glistened. "I looked inside. I saw a blonde woman with a toolbox. She was under your car." Michael felt his stomach knot. Victoria had told him she was bedridden with a headache. "Are you sure it was my wife?" Amira nodded quickly. "She said so on the phone. She said, 'Tomorrow morning when he leaves, it'll look like an accident.' She said she'd cut it very clean so no one would know, just like—" Her voice broke, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Just like the man who killed my parents." Michael's throat tightened. "Your parents?" Amira's fingers clenched the little teddy bear she had shown him earlier. "2 years ago, someone cut the brakes on our car. My mom and dad died. I was in the back seat. I survived. I know what it feels like." The words struck him harder than any business rival ever had. For a girl of 9 to carry that memory, to live with that kind of trauma, it was unbearable. And now she claimed Victoria was connected. Could it be coincidence? Or had his wife's secrets run deeper than he ever imagined? The cafe door opened, and Dr. Benjamin Carter stepped inside. At 55, Carter was sharp, calm, and reliable, the kind of man Michael had trusted for over a decade. A criminal lawyer with a reputation for unraveling complicated cases, Carter carried an air of authority even in casual settings. "Ben," Michael said, standing to greet him, "thank you for coming so quickly." Carter nodded, shaking his friend's hand before sitting beside him. His eyes immediately moved to Amira. "This is the girl." Michael gestured toward her. "Amira Johnson. She saved my life this morning." Carter listened patiently as Amira repeated her story, every word measured but heavy with fear. As she spoke, his expression grew darker. By the end, he leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Michael, this is attempted murder," Carter said quietly. "But we need more than the testimony of a 9-year-old girl. A defense attorney would tear her apart in court. Her credibility would be questioned at every turn." Michael clenched his fists under the table. "So what do we do?" Carter lowered his voice. "We gather evidence, real evidence. We go back to your house carefully and we investigate. But one thing is certain. Your wife is not who she pretends to be." Michael glanced at Amira. She had stopped eating and was staring at them, her small shoulders tense. "Amira," he said softly, "do you have a safe place to stay tonight?" She shook her head. "I always manage on my own." "Not tonight," Michael said firmly. "Tonight you're staying somewhere safe, with me, or at a hotel under Ben's name." Amira's eyes widened. "Why? I'm fine." "No," Carter interjected. "The moment Victoria realizes you know something, you'll be in danger. You've already become a witness." Michael felt his blood run cold. He hadn't considered that. The child who had saved him was now a target. And for the first time, he admitted to himself something he had been denying for weeks. He didn't truly know the woman he had married 5 years ago. An hour later, the three of them arrived back at the mansion. The house, with its tall glass windows and immaculate white facade, looked as serene as ever. But Michael now saw it differently, like a stage set hiding a darker truth. Victoria descended the grand staircase, draped in a silk robe, her blonde hair perfectly arranged despite her supposed illness. She smiled as though nothing were amiss. "Darling," she said warmly, kissing his cheek, "you're home early. I thought you had a meeting downtown." "Change of plans," Michael replied evenly. "This is Dr. Carter, my lawyer, and this is Amira." Victoria's eyes flicked to the child, and for a fleeting second Michael saw it, a flash of pure panic. She recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "And who is this little one?" "She saved my life today," Michael said, watching her carefully. Victoria's voice wavered. "What do you mean?" "The brakes on the Lamborghini were sabotaged. Someone cut the cables during the night." Victoria gasped, pressing a hand dramatically to her chest. My God, that's terrible. Who would do such a thing? From behind Michael, Amira shrank, clutching his jacket with trembling hands. He felt her fear like a pulse running through him. We don't know yet, Michael lied smoothly. But we'll find out. Dr. Carter will coordinate the investigation. Of course, Victoria replied quickly, her tone oddly high-pitched. But I need to lie down. This news, it's making me dizzy. She turned and hurried up the stairs. As soon as she was out of sight, Carter leaned closer to Michael. She's lying. Her body language screams it. She's guilty. Michael's jaw tightened. I know. The question is, why? Carter opened his briefcase, pulling out several documents. While you were at the cafe, I did some preliminary checks. Michael, your wife took out a life insurance policy in your name 3 months ago, worth $10 million. Michael's eyes widened. $10 million? I never signed anything. Your signature is there. Carter handed him the paper. But look closer. The watermark. It's a professional forgery. Michael's hands trembled as he stared at the document. His wife, his marriage, his entire life, a lie wrapped in silk, and at that moment, Amira tugged urgently at his sleeve. Her small voice sent chills down his spine. Sir, she's coming back down, and she's holding something in her hand. The air inside the Hudson mansion grew heavier with each passing second. Michael stood frozen at the base of the staircase, Carter tense beside him, and Amira half hidden behind his suit jacket, her small hand gripping his sleeve like a lifeline. At the top of the stairs, Victoria reappeared. Her silk robe no longer flowed with elegance. It clung awkwardly to her frame as she descended step by step. But it wasn't the robe that seized Michael's attention. In her right hand, glinting under the chandelier, was a kitchen knife. Victoria, Michael said carefully, forcing his voice to remain calm. What are you doing? She laughed, but the sound was sharp, brittle. You know, don't you? That damn child ruined everything. Amira flinched at the word child. Michael instinctively stepped in front of her, his eyes locked on his wife. No, the woman he thought was his wife. Put the knife down, Carter said evenly, his lawyer's calm demeanor belying the discreet movement of his hand as he slipped his phone from his jacket pocket and began recording. Talk? Victoria sneered. You wanted to talk. 5 years I smiled at your boring friends, cooked your boring dinners, played the perfect wife, and now, when I finally had a way out, this little street rat blows it all to pieces. Michael felt his chest tighten. Why, Victoria, why do you want to kill me? Her eyes narrowed as she took another step downward. Because $10 million is worth more than another decade of pretending. Because there's someone who actually loves me waiting for me. Someone who doesn't treat me like a piece of furniture in a glass house. Behind Michael, Amira's voice shook but grew stronger. She killed my parents. The room fell silent. Victoria froze on the staircase, her knuckles whitening around the knife handle. What did you say, you little rat? Amira's tears glistened under the light, but her voice carried with surprising strength. 2 years ago. You were there. You cut their brakes. I remember your face. At the funeral, you pretended to be a reporter. You smiled when I cried. Michael's heart dropped into his stomach. He turned toward Victoria, searching her expression, but all he found was raw fury. Is that true? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. Of course not, Victoria snapped. She's delirious. She's a filthy orphan making up stories. You'd believe her over me? Carter, still recording, interjected. Delirious or not, your body language says otherwise. Every word you've spoken is an admission of guilt. Victoria's composure cracked. She descended 2 more steps, the knife trembling now, her face contorted in rage. "Shut up, shut up. You think you've uncovered something? You have no idea who I am." It was Carter who revealed what came next. His voice was steady, deliberate, like a surgeon exposing a wound. Victoria Hudson, or should I say, Christine Palmer. The name dropped into the room like a bomb. Victoria stopped dead on the staircase. The mask of elegance shattered completely, leaving only the raw, cornered expression of a woman stripped of her disguise. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. "Because I spent the last 2 hours digging into your life," Carter replied, pulling documents from his briefcase without breaking eye contact. "Christine Palmer, wanted in 4 states, insurance fraud, homicide investigations that were ruled accidents but never sat right with investigators. Always the same pattern. Marry wealthy men, take out enormous life insurance policies, and then tragic accidents." Michael staggered back, gripping the railing for support. "How many?" His voice cracked. Carter's jaw clenched. "You would have been the 5th. Amira's parents were collateral damage. Her father discovered Christine was using the warehouse where he worked to hide stolen parts, and when he threatened to report her, she silenced him. Same method, same precision." Victoria's face twisted into a grotesque smile. 5 years pretending to be the submissive, perfect wife. Do you have any idea how suffocating that was? The dinner parties, the fake charities, your endless rules? I endured it all for this moment, and then this little brat shows up and ruins years of planning. She raised the knife, her eyes blazing. "You think divorce would have given me what I deserved? No. Widowhood was the only way. $10 million. Freedom." Michael's fury boiled inside him, but he forced his voice to stay even. "You could have walked away. You didn't have to kill." "Kill?" Victoria spat. "It was never personal, just business." At that moment, Amira's voice rang out, trembling but firm. "My dad wasn't business. He was a good man. You took him and my mom away, and I won't let you hurt anyone else." Victoria descended another step, the knife glinting. She pointed it at Amira, her eyes narrowing to slits. "You're nothing but a filthy street rat, and when I'm done, no one will even remember you." Carter's phone kept recording, every venomous word captured. Michael's pulse thundered in his ears. He knew they were seconds away from violence, and for the first time he realized just how little he had known the woman he had led into his life. She wasn't Victoria Hudson, loving wife and partner. She was Christine Palmer, predator, con artist, murderer. The mask had finally fallen. The room seemed to shrink as Christine Palmer, stood halfway down the staircase, knife raised, her blonde hair gleaming under the chandelier like a cruel halo. Michael could hear Amira's rapid breathing behind him, each gasp a reminder of the danger closing in. Carter's phone, hidden in his hand, kept recording steadily, catching every venomous word spilling from Christine's mouth. "Do you think I'll let you ruin me?" Christine hissed, stepping lower, the knife trembling but aimed directly at Amira. 5 years of planning, and it all comes crashing down because of a stray child?" Michael shifted his stance, subtly putting himself between Christine and the girl. His mind raced, calculating distance, the weight of the situation. He was no fighter, but adrenaline surged like a tidal wave through his veins. "Christine," he said, forcing calm into his tone, "listen to yourself. You've already confessed. The police will be here any moment. Put the knife down before this gets worse." She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Worse? You have no idea what worse looks like. You think I acted alone?" Her voice grew louder, edged with hysteria. "There are powerful people behind this, people who don't forgive mistakes, People who won't let one dirty kid ruin years of work. Amira clutched her teddy bear tighter, her small voice trembling but cutting through the tension. You're lying. You've always lied. You killed my parents, and now you want to kill him too. Christine's eyes flicked to the child with pure hatred. Shut up. You should have died with them. Carter finally stepped forward, his tone sharp. That's enough. Every word you've spoken is on record. Attempted murder. Fraud. Conspiracy. You're finished. Christine's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Finished? I've survived worse than this. You think the NYPD scares me? The feds chased me for a decade and never caught me. At that moment, the faint wail of sirens pierced the silence outside, growing louder, closer. Christine's composure shattered. She lunged forward, knife raised high. Time seemed to slow. Michael reacted on instinct, throwing his body sideways and knocking Amira to the ground. Christine's foot slipped on the polished step, sending her crashing forward. The knife clattered across the floor, embedding itself into the wooden wall with a violent thud. Michael pinned her down, muscles straining as she thrashed beneath him, screaming curses at Amira. I'll find you, you worm. I'll finish what I started. The front doors burst open. Detective Rodriguez and two uniformed officers rushed inside, weapons drawn. Within seconds, Christine Palmer was dragged to her feet, her wrists forced into steel cuffs. She kicked and spat, her robe disheveled, screaming threats that echoed through the marble hall. You think you're safe? She shouted as Rodriguez pushed her toward the door. There are people behind me, people who will bury you both. You're nothing but pawns in a game you can't win. Michael stood breathless, sweat dripping down his temples, holding Amira tightly in his arms. The little girl shook violently, but did not cry. Her eyes, wide and haunted, stayed locked on Christine until the woman was shoved into the back of a police cruiser outside. Carter approached Rodriguez, handing over his phone. Every word is recorded, he said firmly. Premeditated murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, it's all here. Rodriguez nodded, his expression grim. This is bigger than a simple homicide case. She's tied to something larger. I can feel it. Amira tugged at Michael's sleeve, her small voice breaking the momentary silence. Sir, what did she mean? Powerful people? Michael looked down at her, then over to Carter, who was closing his briefcase. The lawyer's expression was dark, his jaw set. She wasn't lying about that, Carter admitted. Christine Palmer didn't act alone. She's part of an organized insurance scheme, an operation that's been moving millions through staged accidents. Now that she's been caught, they'll look to clean up loose ends. Michael's stomach turned cold. He tightened his embrace around Amira. You mean they'll come for her? Carter met his eyes. Unless she's under protection. Strong protection. Michael looked down at the girl in his arms. The child who had saved him from certain death. The one who had exposed the darkest secret of his marriage. Her face was pale, her body trembling. But her eyes, those eyes were full of the same fierce courage that had driven her to run barefoot through his gates. In that moment, Michael made a decision. He knelt down, taking Amira's small hands in his. Amira Johnson, he said softly, his voice breaking. You saved me twice today. Now it's my turn to save you. She blinked at him, confused, her lips parting as if to speak. Would you like to have a family again? Michael asked. One that will never let anyone hurt you? Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not from fear. They were from hope. You would adopt me? She whispered. If you'll have me, Michael replied, and with Dr. Carter's help, I'll make sure you're safe from all of them. Amira dropped the teddy bear and threw her arms around him, sobbing into his chest. I promise I'll be a good daughter. I'll study hard. I'll never steal food again. Michael kissed the top of her tangled curls. You're already perfect the way you are. You're the bravest daughter I could ever ask for. Outside, the sirens faded as the police convoy carried Christine Palmer away to face justice. Inside, a new bond had been forged, not out of blood, but out of trust, survival, and the kind of courage that only comes from those who have already lost everything. And though Michael didn't yet know the full scale of the storm to come, he understood one thing. He and Amira were now bound together, and he would protect her with everything he had. The federal courtroom in Manhattan was packed, every seat filled with reporters, lawyers, and curious spectators eager to witness the downfall of Christine Palmer. The woman, once known as Victoria Hudson, sat at the defense table, her hands cuffed, her hair no longer styled in golden waves but hanging limp and lifeless. She wore an orange prison uniform that stripped her of all glamour and deception. Gone was the image of the elegant socialite. Now she was only a con artist, a murderer exposed before the world. At the prosecution table, Michael Hudson sat with Dr. Benjamin Carter at his side. Next to him, in a neatly pressed blue dress and polished black shoes, sat Amira Johnson. Her braids were tied with golden bows, her small hands folded tightly around her teddy bear. She looked far older than her 9 years. Her face carried a strength born of suffering, but her eyes now held something new: hope. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. The judge, stern and commanding, reviewed the charges. "Christine Palmer, you stand accused of first-degree murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and criminal conspiracy. How do you plead?" Christine leaned toward the microphone, her voice still carrying a trace of arrogance. "Not guilty." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. Carter simply handed over the phone with the recording. The judge listened to minutes of venomous confession. The knife threats, the declaration of a $10 million insurance scam, the admission of killing Amira's parents. By the time the playback ended, the courtroom was silent except for the scribbling of reporters' pens. Christine's smirk faltered. The jury deliberated less than an hour. When they returned, the verdict was swift and final. Guilty on all counts. The gavel came down sharp and final. Christine Palmer was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michael reached for Amira's hand. She squeezed his tightly, her eyes focused on the woman who had destroyed so many lives. But instead of hatred, Amira whispered, "I feel sorry for her, Dad. She'll never know what it's like to have a real family." Michael felt a lump rise in his throat. "That's what makes you different, Amira. You have a heart too big for hate." The weeks that followed brought change faster than Michael had ever imagined. The adoption process was finalized under Carter's careful guidance. Papers were signed, and for the first time since she'd been left alone in the world, Amira had a home. A real home. She began attending one of New York's best private schools, where she quickly earned a reputation as bright and determined, especially in mathematics. Her bedroom in the Hudson mansion transformed into a space of color and warmth. Posters on the walls, shelves filled with books, and a princess-themed bed she had chosen herself. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. But it wasn't just Amira's life that changed. Michael himself was no longer the same man. He had once measured his success in contracts, skyscrapers, and millions in the bank. Now he found greater meaning in something entirely different. With Carter's help, he founded the Amira's Hope Foundation, using unclaimed funds recovered from Christine's fraudulent accounts. The foundation's mission was simple but powerful: to take children off the streets, give them shelter, and protect them from the same fate Amira had narrowly escaped. Within 6 months, the foundation had placed 43 children into safe homes. Within a year, it expanded into multiple cities. And every time Michael attended an event for the foundation, Amira stood beside him, speaking with courage and clarity beyond her years. One evening, as they walked down Fifth Avenue together toward Michael's armored SUV, Amira tugged at his hand. "Dad, do you think my parents would be proud of me?" Michael stopped, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. He knelt down on the sidewalk and looked her straight in the eye. "Amira, your parents raised you to be brave, honest, and kind. They would be prouder of you than I could ever put into words." Amira hugged him tightly. "And they'd love you, too, because you loved me the way they did." That night, as he tucked her into bed, she revealed something that made him smile through tears. "Daddy, I wasn't sleeping behind your wall by accident. I'd been watching your house for a week. You always left food out for the stray cats. I figured if you were kind to animals, maybe you'd be kind to children, too." Michael kissed her forehead. "So you saved me because I fed cats?" "No," Amira murmured, already drifting to sleep. "I saved you because good people deserve to be protected, just like you protect me now." 18 months later, Michael and Amira stood side by side on the stage of an international children's rights conference. Amira, now 10 years old, spoke confidently into the microphone, her voice echoing across the hall. "My father taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from or how much money you have. What matters is whether you have the courage to help someone when no one else does. Sometimes saving a life is as simple as shouting, 'Don't drive.'" The audience rose in thunderous applause. Michael's eyes filled with pride as he watched the girl who had once been barefoot and forgotten transform into a voice for hundreds of children. Behind bars, Christine Palmer's name faded into infamy, but the name Amira Hudson began to shine, a symbol of resilience, courage, and hope. Michael had once been a man defined by his wealth. Now he was defined by something far greater: the love of a daughter who had saved him, and the purpose of protecting countless other children like her. And in that purpose, both father and daughter had finally found their true family. This story proves that courage can change destinies. If it touched you, hit like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments.